Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and kids of all ages. I know that you were expecting a Chapter 1, Section 2, but we're going to shake things up a bit. We're going to be on Chapter 3, Section 2. I would like you to take a quick browse through Chapter 3, Section 1. It is basically the integer work that we just did in Chapter 5 with the 6th grade curriculum. So we're going to go ahead and pick up there, and we are going to learn today how to add integers. So you should definitely be looking at the 7th grade book. It is a hardback book for the notes only. If you would like to make copies of the notes on your own and then add the notes that we write on lined paper to the margins, that's fine. There may be some sections where you're going to have to use lined paper as well. For all of the work, it needs to be done on lined paper. So all of the textbook pages that would be turned in for classwork or homework all need to be done on loose leaf lined paper, not in a spiral, because when you rip them out to turn them in, I don't want all the frayed edges. So make sure you're working on loose leaf paper. You can use college or wide ruled, either is fine. So today you're going to need all of the materials you see here, and the brain is the largest because that's the most important. On your blank piece of notebook paper, the line paper that you have in front of you, please make sure that you go ahead and title your paper 3.2 with that little 7 in the left-hand corner, and then that will let us know that we're in the 7th grade book, Chapter 3, Section 2. Make sure that every piece of lined paper has the same heading on it. The only thing you want to change is the textbook page if we change pages. You should also have the textbook out in front of you, open to textbook page 203. That's very important as well. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to flip back one slide, and that's going to be our adding integers. So this is the slide that we would normally fill things in. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to talk about what's in the textbook first, and then I'll show you what to write on the line. So the vocabulary startup here says integers like 2 and -2 are called opposites. We should already know that, so it shouldn't really be something you need to write. Two integers that are opposites are also called additive inverses. So that vocabulary is new to us, so we're going to want to write that down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and first I've got my purple pen that I'm working with. So for you, I'm just going to draw a little arrow. Please don't write in the book. And that's the first thing that we're going to write on our lined paper, additive inverses. So I'm going to flip over to that screen now. So the first word we're going to add here is additive inverses. And under additive inverses, we're going to write that these are two integers that are opposites. Then we're going to add an example, and we're going to add an example. And now we're going to add another vocabulary word, and that's just one of the properties, which is going to be very important. You want to make sure that you understand that, remember, like we learned in 6th grade math, the properties are going to apply to any set of numbers. So these are important for you to remember. So the additive inverse property basically says when you add two additive inverses together, their sum is 0. So you can see that I have written the information here, the sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. I've also changed the color of 0, and then I added an example. Now I'm just going to remind you, just like we talked about in class, the structure of the notes is very important. So when I come to check your notes, I want to make sure that the structure is the same. What I mean is when I'm skipping lines, you should. When I have a bubble around something, you should have a bubble around something. The indentation, all of that plays into being able to study these notes easily and prepare for tests and quizzes. So I know you're probably not at the end of your paper. You can just draw a squiggly line, and then you want to write 3.2, add integers, textbook 204, same sign, because now we're going to be looking at a different section. So in words in your textbook, you should be following along. It says to add integers with the same sign, add their absolute values. The sum is positive if both integers are positive, and negative if both integers are negative. So they have two examples listed for you. So we're going to go ahead and write the rule there now. So for short notes, I have add their absolute values and then keep the sign. And I'll explain what I mean by keep the sign. So here are some examples. Here you have 8 plus 2 equals 11, and both are positive, and then our answer will be positive. Now we're going to try another one. So now you see -8 plus -2. Now that -2 is in parentheses so that you don't confuse the plus sign with the negative for the 2. So just so you know that's why you have a parentheses there around that one. So -2 plus -2. Now just for this one, I'm going to show you about the absolute values just so that you can see. So the absolute value of -8 plus the absolute value of -2 would equal, then just below it, you're going to have 8 plus 2 and you get 11. But now here's the part with the red. See where I said keep the sign right here? Now here's the part where, notice each of them are both negative, so that means our final answer will be negative. So the answer up top here is going to be negative 11. So basically all we're going to do is add the absolute value and keep the sign. So example 1 here, you want to copy on your paper. It says negative 3 plus negative 2. So again, you're going to take the absolute value of negative 3, which is going to be 3, and the absolute value of negative 2, which is 2, and you're going to add those together so we get 5. And then remember, because we have this negative sign here, we know that our answer is going to be negative. So you should have gotten negative 5. Now I'd like you to copy example 2. So here you have negative 26 plus negative 17. Again, you've got negative 26, so we'll take the absolute value of that, which is really just 26. So we're going to take 26 plus, and then the absolute value of negative 17 is 17. So then you get your answer, which is going to be 43. And remember, because you had a negative and a negative, you're going to have a negative answer, negative 43. Now on your own paper, I'd like you to do A, B, and C, please. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and see what you got. So negative 5 plus negative 7 is going to give you, remember your sign is going to be negative, so you can even put that there right away. And then 5 plus 7 is going to be 12. So you should have gotten negative 12 for your first answer. For B, you have negative 10 plus negative 4. So again, you've got a negative sign for both of them. And then 10 plus 4 is going to give you 14. So your final answer here should be negative 14. And finally, you have negative 14 plus negative 16. So again, the absolute value of each loses its negative, but I'm going to put the negative right here so I remember to keep it in my sign. And then 14 plus 16 is going to give you negative 30. So hopefully you got all 3 of those right. And now we're going to move on to the next piece. So now you're going to have your paper or draw a squiggly line because this is a new key concept. So we've got add integers, different signs. Now you'll notice I put a bubble around this one, and keep in mind I did write it in red. You should be using colored pencils as well if you have them. And I'm just going to go back a slide here so that you can see that I did go ahead and bubble the same sign. I changed that, so I want to make sure that you have that. So now we're going to talk about the rules. It's got the rules in words, and it says to add integers with different signs, subtract their absolute values. And then the sum is, and it'll tell you how to find the sign. So let's first go ahead and write the piece about subtracting their absolute values. So as you can see here, I wrote a little bit of a different wording for this. So what I wrote is find the difference of their absolute values. What I mean by that is, notice how it says subtract in their version. Sometimes that can get confusing. So if you find the difference in their absolute values, then you really are subtracting. But what that does is, it doesn't matter which one is bigger, which one is smaller, as long as you find the difference between the absolute values. So now for my second star, I wrote, use the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So sometimes it's better if you figure out which sign you're going to use right up front. So let's go with the example that they have in the book, 9 plus negative 4. So on your paper, you want to write 9 plus and then negative 4 equals. Now you want to think first, which number has the greater absolute value? Well, now you have 9 and 4. So if you put just a little check mark over the 9, then you don't have to think about that at the end. What that's telling you is, at the end, once I finish finding the difference of their absolute value, my answer is going to be positive. So now the difference between 9 and 4 is going to be 5. So if I did 9 minus 4, then I get an answer of 5. And again, since my check mark is over the 9, my answer is going to be positive because 9 was positive. As you can see now on textbook page 205, they've got some examples up here with some diagrams. Go ahead and take a look at the diagram and see if that is a method that will help you. If not, then you can continue to do it just using the rule. So for example 3, you see that the problem is 5 plus negative 3. So on your paper, just as you can see here, you want to make sure that you write 5 plus negative 3. And then you want to, this is up to you, but this is what I would do. I'm immediately going to put a check mark next to the 5, or above the 5 rather, so that I remember that that's my largest absolute value. You can do it before, you can do it after. Now I'm going to find the difference between 5 and 3. So the difference between 5 and 3 is going to be 2. So I know now that my answer is going to be 2. And notice that the 5 has the check, so that means my answer is going to be positive because 5 was positive. I'm also going to show you a second method for you to use so that you can kind of visually see what we're talking about here. Remember, at the beginning of this section, we learned about additive inverses. So I'm going to use green for positive and red for negative. All right, I'm also going to leave, for those of you that aren't working in color, I'm also going to leave the red ones, which are the negative ones, open. So remember, these are negative and these are going to be positive. So that's going to be throughout the video. So now what we're looking at, remember we learned about additive inverses? Well, now you can see we have 5, positive 5, which is this number right here, okay? And then we have negative 3, which is this number right here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little cross through 1, 2, and 3. The reason I'm doing that is because remember, these are additive inverses. So we're going to cross out any, they're also called zero pairs. So now as you can see, we are left with 2, and that's our answer. Our answer is 2, and notice it's going to be a positive 2. The next example you have is example 4, and that is find negative 3 plus 2. So I wrote the problem, and right away I'm going to put a little check mark over the negative 3. Now keep in mind, what I would probably do is write my negative sign immediately. As soon as I realize that the absolute value for negative 3 is obviously bigger than the absolute value for 2, then I'm going to put the negative sign here. So now I've taken care of that. And now all I need to do is find the difference between 3 and 2. So now I can just take 3 minus 2, and I get 1. And so my answer is 1. Rather, negative 1. With the counters, you can also see this. So let's draw first our negative counters. We have 3, 1, 2, and 3 of our negative counters. So that's a negative, negative, and negative. And then we have 2. So that's covering this guy right here. And then we have 2 for positive. So we're going to draw them right underneath here. And I'm going to fill those in just like I did before. And remember, you're just going to cross out any zero pairs or the additive inverse because of the additive inverse property. Notice you only have one counter left and it's a negative. So that's how you get negative 1 for your answer, which is right here. So now we're looking at example 5, and it's positive 7 plus negative 7. Well, when you think about the absolute value, if you put absolute value signs around it, then you get 7 and you get 7. So if you're subtracting that, then the difference is going to be 0. So that means your answer will be 0. And remember, 0 is neither positive nor negative. So you want to make sure that you understand that. So that it won't be positive or negative. And you can even see that with the counters. So as you can see, I've drawn our 7 positive and 7 negative counters. And as you can see, all 7 of them are going to cross out because each one of them has a partner. And that's what leaves us with 0. Now we have negative 8 plus 3. Well, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8, minus the 3 is going to give us a difference of 5. So we know our answer is going to be equal to 5, and remember, the largest absolute value was negative, so our answer will be negative 5. So just make sure that you're on the same page here. Now let's go ahead and look at example 7. Example 7 looks like a doozy, but it's really not. I'm going to show you how to do it now. Now, whenever you're looking at a problem like this, right away, you should look for any zero pairs. So let's go ahead and put a green box around this 2, and let's put a red box around this negative 2, because essentially what that does is it zeroes them out, because 2 plus negative 2 is going to leave you with a big fat 0. So then all you're left with is the negative 15. So your answer for this problem is going to be negative 15. And that's because you zero paired the 2 and the negative 2. Now you want to pause your video, because you can see that big pause sign there, and you want to go ahead and try letters F, G, and H. Go ahead and do those on your own now. Once you finish with all 3, then you can push play and check out my work. Just a reminder, you need to be writing the original problem first for all of these problems. Even if you've made photocopies, if you've made photocopies, then you can work right from the pages. But when we get to the textbook work pages, you need to actually show the work. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. So for F, it looks like you have 10 plus negative 12. So right away, you know that your answer is going to be negative because negative 12's absolute value is 12 and 10's absolute value is 10. So you know your answer is going to be negative. And then you're going to find the difference between 12 and 10. Now, notice I switched the order here. It's because, remember, we're working with absolute values, so we're just looking for the difference. That's going to be 2, so our answer is going to be negative 2. So hopefully you got that one correct. Now right away I'm looking at negative 13 plus 18. Well, I can see right away that that 18 is going to be the bigger absolute value. So now I'm just going to find the difference between 18 and 13. So I'll take 18, subtract 13, and I get 5. Now keep in mind that's going to be a positive 5 because 18 was the larger absolute, I'm sorry, the greater absolute value. And so that's the sign that we take. And then last but not least, they tried to trick you here. You have a -14 plus -6 plus 6. So right away, you need to recognize that these two numbers right here are 0 pairs. So you're just going to basically forget about those right away, okay? And then you'll be left with your answer, which is going to be -14. And it's -14 because that's what you had over here to start with. Hopefully you did an awesome job. Let's go to the next page. So now you're going to be looking at textbook page 206 that looks like this. We've got a roller coaster. You should definitely have a squiggly line on your paper if you are in the middle of the paper, and if not, you just want to make sure that you had it in the top right with that textbook page number, which is 206. So now let's go ahead and look at example 8. So example 8 says a roller coaster starts at point A. It goes up 20 feet, so we're going to put a line under that. Then it goes, I'm sorry, let me actually use green. It goes up 20 feet, and let me make that a little smaller. There we go. One last time, up 20 feet, then it goes down 32 feet, and then it goes up 16 feet to point B. So I want you to notice why I used each color. Keep in mind that the green is going to be positive and the red is going to be negative. So hopefully that was easy enough for you to follow. So now let's go ahead and put that problem on our next page. So right here, I put 20, but I also put up, just so that you could remember what we were doing here. Plus, and then we are going to find where it went down. So it went down 32 feet. So now we're going to write a -32. And remember, when you're writing that addition sentence, you want to put the parentheses around that just so that the plus and the negative don't get mixed up. And then the last thing, it went back up. And it went back up 16 feet. So now we're going to do plus, and then I'm changing to green again, 16 up. And I'm just having you, and this is just for now while we're learning this, I'm having you label up and down just so that you remember exactly what that means. When you go up, it's going to be positive, and down is negative. So now we're going to use the commutative property to switch some numbers around. So we're going to get that 20 plus 16 together so that we can add those easily. So 20 plus 16, which we got from the far end, and then we're going to have plus -32, okay? And the reason, like I said, the reason we're doing that is because now we can combine them because they are both positive. So 20 plus 16 is going to give us 36, and now we have 36 plus -32. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and look which one has our greatest absolute value. Well, 36 does. So that means our answer is going to be positive. And then the difference between 36 minus 32 is going to give us 4. So our final answer will be positive, and it will be a positive 4. So that means it says first to write an addition sentence to find the height at point B in relation to point A. Then find the sum and explain its meaning. So we went ahead and did that, and we found point B is 4 feet higher than point A. Now I'd like you to do the same for the got it problem. I definitely want you, it says the temperature is -3 degrees, so obviously -3 is going to be negative. An hour later, it drops 6 degrees, and 2 hours later, it rises 4 degrees. So this is the only hint I'm going to give you with the colors that I've just done here. So now on your own paper for I need you to write an addition sentence, or write an addition expression rather. So write an addition expression and then find the sum and explain its meaning. So there are going to be several parts to your answer. You want to go ahead and, pause now and do it on your own. So really pause. All right, so as you can see here, I have the first part of your answer, and I have -3 degrees. I've written it in red because it's a negative number, and that's just our starting point. And then I've put plus -6 degrees, and just above it, I do want you to write drops for right now. I want you to write the word that tells you what it is, whether it's positive or negative, plus, and then rises. which is 4 because it's green. So now under the next one, you need to go ahead and start to find your answer. So we've got -3 plus -6. Let's go ahead and take that by itself first. So if we take -3 plus -6, we've got the same sign here and we're adding. So remember from our very first piece of our lesson, -3 plus -6 gives us -9 because we're going to keep the sign and add them together. So now we have -9 plus the 4 that we had from before. So now we have a separate problem. So here, now you know that your answer is definitely going to be negative because -9's absolute value is 9. So it's going to be negative, but then you need to, so let me go ahead and write that over here, equals negative. And then you're going to find 9 minus 4. So we're just going to do 9 minus 4 right here, and that gives you 5. So now you know your answer is -5. So we're going to put a little box around that as well. And it says to explain. So the explanation should say that the new temperature is -5 degrees Fahrenheit. So for this problem, there are 3 pieces. Make sure that you're watching very carefully when you do your guided practice, and make sure that you're watching to see those 3 pieces if it asks for it, which I believe it does in number 4. So I want everybody to take out a fresh sheet of paper now to do your guided practice on. So even if you're just at the top of the paper, I still want your guided practice on a separate sheet because I want to be able to check those tomorrow when you first get in. All right, so on that fresh, clean sheet of paper that you got, I would like you to write 3.2 guided practice. Your name, date, and period needs to be in the top right-hand corner, and I would like you to do that now, please. You are going to turn this sheet in as soon as you get to class in the morning. So you're going to put it, one person from each group is going to collect it, and you're going to go ahead and put it in the collected work bin. So I will check in, and it'll be sort of like a mini quiz grade to see what you understood from the homework. I'll also still be checking your notes, but you'll be starting on the independent practice immediately. The next thing you want to make sure that you do is for every single problem, you need to copy the problem exactly as they've shown you. So for this, I would write number 1, and then I would write -6 plus -8 equals, and then you need to show the work just like we've done. So you're going to do that for each one. For number 4, you won't need to write the problem out, like all of the words, but you'll need to do it exactly the way we did it for I and example 8. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Whoops, one more thing. Don't forget to have textbook page 206 right up here. Very important. Very, very important.